there should be a screen that pops up and just goes 3, 2, 1, and then we run. So
we are live.
Oh, so no countdown anymore.
No
so
countdown.
Crowdcast has changed it. So we are live now, guys. All right. So first, before we get started, gotta cheers, you guys. Thanks for being on here. Another episode, and this is actually a really special episode. Cheers, guys. This is our 20th episode, I believe.
Wow. Wow. All right.
Right. So it's been an interesting little journey as we define what this actually is supposed to be, other than just me an excuse to drink with my dog buddies. So that's pretty. But today's a really special episode. I got some great people on today. Some people I really respect, have been in the game for a really long time. I would consider them, like OGs in the game with it. Howard Young, and then Rob. I always mess up your last name, Palladou.
It's easy. It's Palladou.
Palladou. See, I always mess it up because I said Palladou. It's Palladou. So it's always. Whereas I got the easiest name in the world. My name is Mike Jones.
So you just go Chateau Palladou.
Palladou. So
Chateau Palladou.
I appreciate you guys for coming on, and I know Howard, this is pretty late for you guys out there. You're far East Coast. So I appreciate your being on as well. Just so people know, the way that I've met both these gentlemen is Rob. Samantha asked me to come to the Hot Wing Challenge, and I had heard your name before. So Rob, if you don't know this, people who are watching this, and there's about I think like 1,100 or like 1,900 people on here right now. Rob is a sadistic man that likes very hot sauce and will play games with you. And just like, oh, hey, we're just going to do this whole entire thing and ask questions. And then, you know what? Let's do the one that's off the list. And then it murders you. And then you end up barfing and throwing up for like an hour and a half on the way home. But that was an awesome. We did Howard, if you didn't see it, we did Rob put together this amazing thing for one of his rescues. We'll talk about too, where we did the Hot Ones challenge. I don't know. Now knowing Rob, I feel like it was a setup because you probably like maneuvered some of the sauces around. Where it was me, Michael Ellis, freaking
Kelly Dunbar,
Rob, Kelly Dunbar, and then
Amy Kennerson.
Yeah, and then her husband was out there too. I didn't even know we talked before.
Oh, Jimmy. Yeah.
Yeah. So and we've had a great relationship ever since we've seen each other. So like that was really cool for me. That was a huge thing for me because I was like, why the hell am I up there with like these guys? Like I'm just the dude with the tattoos and the beard that people like. I was like, what? Like, okay, so like it was just really cool to be there. And then I'll tell the quick story is that we went through the whole entire list, and like at this time I was extremely vegan just because like my stomach issues. So Rob accommodated all that stuff, and like he's like got everything together, and we go through these wings, and every single wing we do a question. And I think I want to say it had to be wing 4 or 5 where I almost gave. I think it had to be like the second to the last one where I gave up my like plant-based and I reached for the milk. I was just like, nope. And then I have a freaking gluten allergy too. So like with my stomach, so I tried to grab the beer. I was like, oh man, this is a horrible decision. And then I was all right, cool. Like I was like, we're in front of people. This is live on the internet. I was like, I can't start listening over here just crying in the corner. So I just like, all right, fine, I'm good. And then Rob decides to add the double whammy at the end, which I still to this day don't remember that sauce because as soon as I tasted it, I freaking just was like, nope, focus.
Yeah, that one's called the bomb.
That's the one, the last one that killed me?
Yeah, and it makes your teeth hurt. Oh. It tastes like ass, and yeah, it's super hot. I use it quite a bit, just to heat up some sauces. But yeah, by itself, it'll kill you. But I probably have about 50 of those kind of hot sauces in my cabinet.
Dude, that's
yeah.
I gotta send you that Cerberus whiskey because I mean I feel like that would be like an easy all right, cool. This is a cool sipper, whereas the rest of us would be dead. Curled up in a ball, shivering somewhere with some cold sweats or something like that.
Yeah, we'll shut some people down. Yeah,
oh, definitely.
When it comes to hot food. Yeah, and Michael Ellis looked over at me and he says, "Have you been preparing for this?" all my life.
We'll talk about this later too. There's a show on Netflix about guys who make the they make the peppers, right? Like the crazy peppers.
Yeah.
Like those ones. I just saw it the other day. Like in my mind, like because we were watching it. Like I think it was like me, Aaron, and my daughter Ivy. I think we were watching it like in the morning one day, and in my mind, I'm like the guys he's like being sadistic about like I just want to make the craziest pepper. I don't even know how hot this is. There's no scale to it. I'm like, are you friends with Rob? Like
yeah. Now, there's a couple times that I made a really, really, really hot sauce and then shared it with other people because I'm like, it's not hurting. Somebody else needs to try this to make sure I'm not broken. And they come back and go, no, you're broken, dude.
Howard, how do you do with hot?
I like hot, but the older I get, I think the less I like it. My system doesn't like it too much.
So before I introduce you guys even further, like get into all you guys' backgrounds and everything like that, I talked about how I met Rob. I've never physically really met you, Howard. We've talked online. I think it's starting maybe a year or two back. Just simple conversations, and the way that I actually got introduced to you without even you knowing is that you had the white beard. So, and that's when I had I didn't have the baby beard I have now. Happy wife, happy life, right? So like that's when so I had the bigger beard, and someone was like, man, it's like you got to check this dude out. He's like killing. He's like, you guys both got beards and all. So I looked at it. I'd seen your stuff before, but then I just didn't put like the white beard K9 thing. And I think you were doing like a t-shirt run or a design. I was like, I messaged you or something. I was like, I gotta get one of these things because eventually, hopefully, eventually this will turn white and not just all scattered how it is now. But I was just like, man, I was like, all right. And I watched a lot of the work that you were doing and like still in the suit, still, grinding it out. And then like one of my favorite videos was that the cadaver indication that you guys were working with the box and like the clicker. Because I actually sent that to one of my clients when it came to like duration and holding the markers when you were working that in the box. I was like, I rush through things here a lot when it comes to just getting dogs in and out and like teaching really simple indication and not necessarily. And you messaged me a while whenever, not even a month ago with that dog Samson, and I was like, not having these like crazy dogs who are just like high drive and just like focused and pushing and doing all those other things. And I saw like that video, and I actually sent it to my clients. I'm like, look, I was like, this guy's doing cadaver work and he's doing simple. He's teaching the dog how to place its head, drive within the box, show where it's at, indicate where it needs to be. I was like, just look at where it is, and I look at where it goes. And like, this is how simple it is. It doesn't have to be, like it doesn't have to be like freaking what you see on social media where there's bags and stuff everywhere. Like you can start at the basics and probably. I mean, I'm assuming. Have you talked to Jake? Jake Scott, Howard?
No, sounds familiar.
So he's out near Eric Van Ness. So he's a Mondio Ring guy. I think he's a Mondio Ring world champion. Yeah, US. He's a super tattooed dude. Right. So we were talking about indication and like how to do things like because there's so many different avenues and what we work in. I was just trying to figure out like the proper way of teaching indication, especially when it came to not crossing explosive with narcotics or bodies or like things like that. And it was just really interesting to me. So I always look at that one. I think that one push you guys had when you guys were working on that with the cadaver one. I thought that was really cool. But so let's get into the stories of how you guys got started. So Howard, I'm gonna start with you first. How did you get to this place? How did we get here?
It's actually a really strange trip. One of the things I wanted when I got out of college is I really wanted a Rottweiler. I grew up with German Shepherds. At that time, Rottweilers weren't really that well known, which is, we're talking about early 1980s, mid 80s. So actually when I graduated, I didn't have enough money to buy one. I didn't have $300 to put together to actually buy a full-fledged Rottweiler. So I got a Rottweiler mix, half Shepherd, half Rottweiler. And then I actually didn't know enough to obedience training. I hired somebody to obedience train it for me. but it gave me the bug. It kind of gave me the bug to go out, and I actually got a Rottweiler, and then I obedience trained it myself and started really learning, and then got involved with a gentleman that was training protection dogs. So I took my female Rottweiler there, and lo and behold, she had what it takes to actually do, personal protection type work. So one thing led to another, and I ended up spending more and more time there, and ended up being his primary decoy and helping with training police dogs and protection dogs. And one thing led to another, and I also got introduced to the sport of Schutzen, and that opened a lot of doors for me. But honestly, I was running a Schutzen club here in the town that I live, and it got the attention of some of the local police officers. And they started realizing that how inadequate their dogs were. And that's not to compare sport to actual police dogs, but their dogs were inadequate in a lot of ways. And they were seeing these folks come to my place on a weekly basis, and the dogs were outshining there in every aspect. And one thing led to another. The chief was new. There was a new chief at the time, and he asked me to evaluate their 4 teams. And I did, and I found that really 2 of them were just grossly inadequate. And I did a write-up for him and presented it to him. I don't think he was expecting that. I did like his 4-page, typed it out on a typewriter, 4 word processors, and gave it to him. And 2 weeks later, he called me in and asked me if I wanted a job. And I said, I've already got a job. I mean, at that point, I was working as a mental health professional. I said, what do you have in mind? He said, well, I'd like to hire you as our canine trainer, and you would be responsible basically over the whole thing in terms of procurement of dogs, helping select handlers. Now, was I out of my depth? Absolutely. There was so much that I didn't know, but I was bringing a considerable amount of experience with me, certainly willing to learn a lot more. It really opened up the door. And from that point, I mean, I worked for that agency for 26 years before we decided to contract for services. And when I started expanding, I took on the local sheriff's office and then another police department. And in each situation, they were hiring me and my taxes were a mess. So we talked to a financial advisor. He advised us to start a business. So that's where Whitebeard K9 came from. And that has worked out phenomenally well. It's helped immensely.
Awesome. Have you got into the pet sector yet?
I haven't. Eric Stambro teases me all the time. He says, Howard, that's where the money is. That's where the money is. And I realize that. However, I'm not there yet. I probably have I'm working in education now. I probably have another year or 2. And when I retire, I may venture that direction. I've been fortunate that I've been able to pursue my passion. It's not my livelihood. It's been a nice additional source of income. I don't know that I would feel the same way if I'd been full-time all this time. My body's broken enough. I'd probably be wheelchair bound if I was doing it every day, but it's still been it's something I'm still very passionate about. A lot of men, a lot of guys, handlers that I've gotten to know over the years. It's just been it's been a great outlet. A lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I got to go back to the mental health stuff we're going to talk about after this. But Rob, as Howard says, like, his body's broken down. Rob's holding like a cast up and like the same, like this arm here. It's like,
yeah.
So Rob, I know like we've talked about how you got into it and everything like that before, like on Instagram and just like when you had me out for the 11th hour thing. Just give a rundown for the viewers here. Like how did you get started? What's the path? I know you're a man of many different things that you've been doing, and not including just the hot sauce, but just the dog training and everything. So give us the rundown.
Yeah, I've had a few different career paths. And funny that just like Howard, mine started with Rottweilers. I mean, if we go back to when I actually trained a dog, like we talked about earlier, the first dog I ever trained, I was 13. I was training our English Bulldog to climb a ladder with me so we could slide down those slides that used to burn your ass if you had the shorts on, because it was a steel slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I taught my English bulldog to climb that ladder. It's about 7 foot, and go down the slide with me. So I guess I've been training dogs a lot longer than I thought. But to be, the actual training of dogs started with a Rottweiler. I had a shop in a town, and it was a closed-in lot that I started wanting to have a perimeter dog or a sentry dog for. So I went and got these dogs, and I didn't know much about anything. So I got a pit bull Rottweiler mix, a couple of them, and they stole my dogs. And then so I got a friend of mine from the martial arts community goes, "Hey, I heard you're looking for a dog. I've got one at home that my dad's the only person who could touch him. He's been chained out. Kids tease him every day. He's crazy." So I went out and looked at that dog, and it was a full German import Rottweiler, 82 pounds of just solid beauty. And I walked out without anybody in the backyard, and I just grabbed him by his face. And I'm like, "Hey, buddy, what's up?" And we just started playing. My buddy comes out and goes, "Dude, that dog wants to kill everybody." I go, "Well, not me." Put a leash on him, took him home. But it kind of started from there. I didn't know anything about anything, so I started working with another guy who didn't know anything about anything. And we went to every dog training club. We watched. I've still got all my original VHS tapes from like Learburg and all that. They just want to make you just stab yourself in the eye. But yeah, all that stuff back then was all compulsion based. It was escape avoidance. It was a whole lot of things, but that's what was going on. But it just turned into a hobby, and I went to Schützen clubs. I went to PSA clubs. I went to French ring clubs, and I trained everything I could. And then eventually met with some people when I moved to Sonora who had a dog training company going on, and they were into PSA. Because I first started with PSA before it was PSA, it was an APD. Then when that broke down, it became PSA. But anyway, these people were into PSA, plus they were into some of the police agencies, selling them dogs, training dogs, etc. And that got me connected with that community. And as I worked with them, I ended up working for another company. And I worked with about 14, 15, I don't know how many agencies up and down California. And, I'm working with cops every day, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you become a cop?" I'm like, "Okay." In my 40s, I went to the academy and became a cop. Got hired by an agency that I was already training. I had my dog before I had my badge. Yeah. So yeah, I just kind of blew up. Just kind of went down that path, and from that, about 10 years ago or so, we started working with more pet stuff and the reactivity levels and all that. I tell people all the time, I work with most aggressive cases. Thank you very much. I tell people all the time, I learned to teach dogs how not to bite because I first taught them how to bite.
Yep.
How to read that dog, how to read that body language, how to turn it off, how to turn pressures on and off, how to, be with that dog and understand intuitively what that dog was trying to say. So that led to the explosion of the pet side of it. And I started out doing 90% law enforcement and 10% pet. Now I'm probably 90% pet and 10% law enforcement. And the path that we're on in this, Western society with law enforcement, I think we're probably all going to be doing pets soon.
That's definitely that's definitely going to be probably. I mean, that's always been at least our business in Primal Canine. That's been our life. Is predominantly pet behavioral. But Robbie brought up a good point, and this is something I always say is that I learned in behavioral. So I learned in like the dogs, like learning how to read a dog, teaching them essentially not to bite, learning the cues. And in reverse, that helped me learn how to trigger dogs when I'm working as a decoy, so I can work. Because at the same time, when I first learned how to be a decoy, at the time was a helper because it was Schützen. Like before they changed all the different all the different little acronyms and everything for it. Is that I was fighting at the time, so I was in combat sports. I was boxing. Actually, at that time, I was doing mixed martial arts. So I was fighting at the time, so a lot of it's like fast movements, you get stuck in footwork. But what helped me, and this is the question that Ted and Eric had for me last night on Working Dog Radio, because they're like, "Do you think combat sports help be like a better decoy?" And I was like, "It doesn't. Absolutely. It doesn't." Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it 100% helps you with like learning how to move, But I think the part of it that happens with a lot of young guys that come into it, if they're in combat sports, is it's a combat. It's like it's training. It's trial every time. It's not training. They're not, because I mean, Rob, I'm sure, like, I mean, Howard, I'm sure you know this well too. You know, there's a sparring partner, someone who's going to help you get ready for it, and then there's the one that's going to test you for it, which is your fight. So I always look at myself as a good sparring partner. So I was lucky enough to learn behavioral, still be in combat sports, and then go into helper work. And it helped me tremendously because I was already teaching dogs now not how to bite, but I was watching their body language. And then now I'm teaching them how to bite and, you know, creating reactivity and just different like behavioral things, switching drives, drive manipulation. Now I'm watching this dog and I can do things in simple fashion of squaring up, not squaring up, but by understanding what their mental process is and what their drive process is. And I felt like that helped me out so much. Just understanding those things, because I feel like that's a huge thing, because everyone always thinks that you know, protection sports, or even if it's in play, like someone's doing personal protection or like, you know, in law enforcement, I feel like everyone views that as something so much different than what it actually is. I mean, granted, you know, it's different lines, different breeds, different things. The dog has it, they don't have it, you know, whatever it may be. But as a trainer, if you're looking at all different aspects, some dogs can have fun doing it. Are they going to be a qualified personal protection dog, law enforcement dog? Are they going to compete in even Schutzhund or PSA or ring? Maybe not, but they might excel to the best of their potential because they like doing it. But I mean, I think that's a really interesting thing, Rob, is understanding those things and like how that actually helps. Like learning protection actually helps behavioral cases.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and it's funny you bring up the MMA thing and the combat sports thing, you know, because I grew up in martial arts all my life. My dad was a black belt in 1966, the year I was born. You know, so I grew up in it too. And yes, absolutely, it was huge. And I think that's where a lot of my intuition comes from, dogs, and reading someone the same way you would read somebody on the street. Are they friend or foe? How are they moving, etc. That and being able to absorb. You take a little bit of the Aikijitsu end of it, and you're absorbing things, especially when you're decoying, being able to just feel the impact, move with the dog, being able to read your opponent. And yeah, it's a dance. You know, so it was absolutely, you know, huge in my development, I think, and transferred over to my dog training that I didn't even realize until I was already training dogs. I went, oh, the timing's there, the snap's there, everything's right there, you know. And then also training that into my own police dogs. You know, I look for dogs now that I can train in my methods. And, you know, when I first started, every freaking police canine was an asshole. Mm-hmm. And everybody was going to get bit. The handler was going to get bit. The cover officer was going to get bit. And the bad guys were going to get bit. I don't know which order it was going to happen, but somebody was getting bit, because that's the way we picked dogs back then, thinking they had to be aggressive. And what I've learned over the years, and what I've transferred to that, is now my dogs that I pick go out more like a professional fighter. They're not mad. They're not angry. They love the fight. Right. And it's a good time for them when they go out and take down that guy. It's not about being angry and mean and aggressive. That's my job. I go out, I bite, it feels good, and I love to do it, and I want to do it again.
Yeah, we had a dog years ago named Lasso that was a Czech Shepherd, and he was funny looking. His coat was messed up. He moved like a hyena, and he had 4 different handlers, and he bit every one of them. And it was really kind of funny because, you know, by the time it rolled around to the 4th guy, it's like, it's coming. I can't tell you when, but it's coming. Yeah. It's not going to change. So you just need to not overreact. Just roll with it. He's not going to attack you, but if you step on his foot, he's going to let you know it.
Well, that was the old montage, or the whole thing we used to always say. We always said, is every handler, you're either A, you've been bit, or you're going to be bit. Mm-hmm. You know, that was just it. You just knew your day was coming. And thankfully, over the years, we've been able to adjust that. Most of my dogs have never bit their handlers now, right, except for the handlers who were just idiots.
I think when I worked with the Department of Defense, one of my mentors, David, like what he told me is like, it's not when, it's how bad it's going to be.
Yeah.
And like that was because at that time we were working a bunch of low light, no light stuff, and like SWAT teams, like just do a bunch of he's like it takes a specific type of dog for this. He's like, but just know it's not when, it's how bad it's going to be. And that immediately switched into my thought process when I started working on like creating the kennels and bringing dogs in, and like what I wanted to come in, like what could operate in a life-saving situation. And this is a question I want to ask you guys, because you guys have, I mean, I think within the years, if we accumulate every single person in here, it's almost close to 100 years of experience.
Yeah.
I want to, even with with Rob's before the green room talk, I mean, we've got to be close to 100 years of experience combined.
Yeah, you count my 40 years of training an English bulldog.
There you go. Hey, you made an English bulldog climb a ladder. That is an accomplishment.
Yep.
But I mean, like that's like the thing too. And Howard, like in your experience in mental health, when you're dealing with officers who deal with high stress stuff consistently, and the dogs, obviously we all pretty much know they communicate like off of some form of paralanguage, which is like an energy based thing, right? Where they're just going to kind of vibe off of you. Yeah. And this is the question I have for both of you guys, because you guys are predominantly in this field. When you have a dog who is already just genetically inclined to go, and then you're pairing them with an officer who is essentially the same thing, and then they go into this power struggle of like, and like this was an issue for me when I was working with SWAT teams, because I have a bunch of like top-notch operators going through, and they're a bunch of like everything's going crazy. Then I got a bunch of top-notch like dogs are just going crazy, like same thing too. And I don't think people really understand this like from the outside perspective of it. Howard, as you being a mental health professional and also a canine person, like describe that scenario as far as what that communication looks like in that scenario of actual high stress.
Well, it's funny because scenario-based training has been something that's been kind of really brought to the forefront by lots of folks within the last few years. And it was kind of funny is that I kept hearing that. I was thinking that my training is inadequate. And then what I came to realize is I've been doing it all along. And a lot of people have. It's just that I heard scenario-based training and I'm thinking real elaborate scenarios. And the reality is we've always had a commitment to train in the environment we work in. So we don't have a training ground. We train in our community. So we'll pick a place to use. But in terms of your question, I'm not sure that I understand it exactly. I know that I feel like I've kind of had over the years, I've kind of run the whole gambit of handlers, where maybe the least athletic guy has been chosen. And then we also have the collegiate soccer player, the collegiate baseball player, who has all kinds of coordination and understands the value of practice and deep practice, and the fact that the way you get better is that you chip away at it, and it's not something you accomplish overnight. It's something you develop. And those kind of guys seem to really excel and understand the work ethic involved, and the fact that it's not something that just happens, and it's also something you have to maintain. And then your other challenge is you're given a guy that's not athletic at all, has never been involved in team sports or combat sports or anything like that, and he's got his own set of challenges. And where the good instructor is that how do you get that guy to be functional, not just functional, but be proficient and be confident. I think that's the real challenge. And one of the things that it's funny because you bring that up, because I was talking to a buddy of mine. I'm supposed to present at the Blue Line Conference in St. Louis in May. And I left my topic kind of broad. It was maximizing your canine's potential. And I'm not I don't feel like I'm an innovator. I don't have anything I'm trying to sell or a method or anything like that. I mean, our secret sauce, I think, is the fact that, one, I meet with these guys on a weekly basis. Some of them I meet with twice a week. So our training doesn't consist of an in-service that's once or twice a month for 8 hours. I get a 4-hour block twice a week with them. And we've got, that kind of communication allows me to really get involved with them, and get involved with their training. I think the challenge is how do you get that guy that doesn't have the typical tools to be fully functioning. And this buddy of mine that I was talking to, he said, Howard, that's your knack. He said, you can take the most type A guy that's full of himself and cocky and manage to teach him how to channel all that and utilize this dog. And you can take the least likely guy that doesn't have the tools, and you help him become better than adequate, you fully function and quite proficient. And that's something that, that I think that's probably something I've learned to do. And that's probably where the mental health part comes in, because if you think about it, it's really a game of failures. I mean, if you kind of compare it to baseball. So I kind of see like my role sometimes is that of a coach. We're going to have failures. I mean, like baseball, I mean, what sport 3 times out of 10 at bats, and that's considered better than average. So what other thing can you do that you're only successful 3 out of 10 times? I mean, that's a lot like dog training. They're going to make mistakes. And sometimes you've got to be super patient with those mistakes, because one, they may not be able to process what's coming at them, because some of those dogs, because they're so high drive, it's light speed that they've got to make decisions. And that's probably been one of the bigger challenges for some folks, is that they're great on training day, but you put them in the real world where they've got to make decisions and it all shuts down and they can't do it.
So I think that was kind of the point that I was like trying to get to. I probably didn't nail it in there, but real life situation, high level stress, and especially you being in the mental health field, like high level stress, life and death things happening right then and there. And you guys both have experience in this with, within law enforcement, training people, things of that nature. That was one thing that I noticed when I transitioned from, just normal sports stuff into actual, like working with dogs who are on the street, and like, not even this, that, like within SWAT, like just, high level, like dogs who are going to be out there doing like law enforcement work. And the thing that I learned was that it wasn't necessarily, I can train the dog, work with the dog in a certain like position, certain scenario based training, but it was the handler's reaction to that stress inoculation, like that heavy, just boom, like, all right, we're in the shit type of a thing. Like that was one of the things that I felt it was one of the harder things to communicate to them. Like, and like for me, luckily I had a mentor with me and everything like that. Like, but I'm talking to handlers on how to handle a certain situation when their dog's got a live bite off of like a freaking an extraction out of a house where people were smuggling children or something like that. Like, I'm like, hey, like, calm down. This is how you communicate. This is what we got to do. This is what's going on, or doing things like that. I feel like that's the part that's tricky, especially for guys like in your guys' field to do that most of the time, is communicating when the shit hits the fan and how to respond and not freeze.
Well, body cams that's an amazing, I realize that there's mixed feelings about body cameras, but sometimes that just unveils a whole nother faction, because we get to see firsthand deployment where in the past it was just word of mouth. You know how those things just tend to grow, but body cam tells it all. I remember one of the handlers, his first apprehension with his dog, and he ends up telling his dog to out 7 times. So, we take that and we dissect it. I mean, he took the dog off manually, and that's what he intended to do from the very beginning, because it was the safest thing to do. But he caught himself saying out 7 times. So it's on record that he's telling his dog to out 7 times, which is a bad perception.
Yeah.
So he learned from that video. I mean, and if you asked him, how many times did you tell your dog to out? He probably couldn't tell you. He probably doesn't remember, but maybe once.
And that's that mental thing that happens when hyper levels of stress happen, or like you're put into the shit.
You get into auditory exclusion. You get into tunnel syndrome.
Right.
When you're code 3 and the shit's hitting the fan, I've never been in an OIS, officer involved shooting, but I've talked to a lot of guys who have, and one of my current handlers just went through it. And you don't hear the sounds of the bullets. You don't hear the rounds going off. you don't even know if you've been hit or not, you know, and it's just a whole different world. And, you know, one of the things I've always told people, I'm not the world's greatest dog trainer, but I've always been a trainer of people.
Right.
And I've always been able to translate between the two worlds, you know, and to be able to get our guys who are those type A, and so many of us in law enforcement are definitely type A, you know, and you get the type A dog on top of that. And I always say that leash is a conduit.
Right.
You know, so if you're fired up and you're stressed, you're going to send it right down the leash.
Yep.
So a lot of my guys, I send them to reading Lieutenant Grossman and all of that kind of stuff to get to learn about tactical breathing and those kind of things. And we, you know, do a lot of coaching in how to do that. And that in my stress inoculation during my handlers course, you know, it's more like I'm more like a military DI than I'm a trainer at that point. I need my guys to understand stress. They need to hear me yelling in their ear. They need to hear me talking to them, you know, talking shit to them. You know, no, you're screwing it all up. You know, get it right. And I have no problem going back to the old military style of you're getting a bucket. I've taken dogs away from my handlers, gave them a bucket, attach your leash to it. When you can handle this bucket properly, you can have your dog back. Yeah, so you start building that relationship. You start building that idea that, you know, it's more than just your personality, and it actually humbles a lot of them. You know, they become very humble, and they actually become better cops because of it, because they realize, you know, being the type A hard charging guy is not how you get it done.
Right.
You know, take a step back. Yeah. Look at your tools that you have around you. You got tools on your belt, and you got tools in your back seat. You know, how are you going to use a tool appropriately? And it's not just let's go in and dive bomb this thing. Let's not just go in and we're going to bite everything. You know, making guys make good decisions. And I've traveled around this country, and I got to say that the lucky thing is, and, you know, maybe somebody will disagree with me, but I think California law enforcement is some of the best trained law enforcement in the nation. You know, we have so much training, and I've been to like Florida and Georgia and places like that. It's not the same.
Right.
And the dogs aren't the same, and the training isn't the same. There's not as high of an emphasis on the training as in California. We really are very spoiled here. When we get to go to other states and see what's really going on. Yeah, so I get to work with some of the elite. I get to work with guys who really get it because they've had training. We got this. And yes, when we go into a situation where there's high stress, we're actually better prepared. And if those guys who aren't, you know, I've had dogs, you know, that weren't performing well for their handlers, and I've gone in and I smoke cigars when I train. So I got a stogie in my mouth, and I'm running their dog. I'll run your dog. And cigar smoke's coming out. We're in a SWAT situation. It's canine integration. And it's just so relaxed and everything. And then this dog who would normally go after every other cover officer, every other operator, is operating calmly because we've taken it out of the hands of an overzealous type A guy who thinks they got to be hard, heavy hitting, moving. No, just relax. So we've actually gotten to teach some guys just to chill, take down a notch. And, you know, that's everything. And the nice thing, too, is the agencies I work with, I'm typically involved in the selection of the officer. And then once I know the officer, I will go find their dog. And I will find the dog that matches that officer.
Nice.
So that's been huge as well. I don't let officers pick their dog because they're going to pick it wrong, guaranteed. These guys think they want the biggest asshole ever. No, you really don't.
No, you don't.
You couldn't handle someone like yourself, let alone a dog. So yeah, having that option of being able to pick the dog for the scenario has been a huge help.
Sure.
So the cool thing, I think that you brought this up, and Howard did. You'll probably convey on this as well, but and this is something that no one really understands, because I mean, if you look at social media, and this is one of the downfalls I feel with social media and dog training, is that dog training has it's a label. It's dog training. So when then you look at like police dog training, we all know, and Howard, you and I know, just being in, you know, we're in the same state but different counties, there's different policy and procedure.
Sure.
And people don't know these things. They don't know what's, you know, in California, we just had the new UOF. I'm assuming that's going to be, that's gone, happening here. What is UOF is the utilization of force, for people who are watching this, where they want to teach barking holds and all that other, you know, garbage, in high stress situations. But every agency has their own policy and procedure. And it's when people go like cops and I was like, it's different. You know, highway patrol is not a cop. Cop is not a police department. It's not a police department. Like, you know, it's not a highway patrol. It's sheriffs aren't, you know, cops. Like, there's different things. And every state, every county, I want to say almost every county, especially in Cali, there's variance in policy and procedure. And then you go throughout the states, there's even more variance in policy and procedure. So there's such a huge misunderstanding of what, you know, the general public is to what police departments, how they react, how they do the things, how they're supposed to work. And then even more so now with the canines, I mean, the UOF, I mean, there's so much variance there. I mean, like, and I feel like that's not really shown as much to the mass public, or like told as much, because it's always just like, oh, it's police canine, da da da. It's like, I mean, depending on where you're at, what you're doing, like, it's a different thing. So if you guys, because you guys have more insight onto that than I do, so go ahead and whoever wants to go first will talk about that.
I'll go ahead and jump in, and I'll let Howard see if he agrees. But I think that's the same problem we're having in general with the populace not really knowing how law enforcement actually operates. You know, not understanding the procedures. They don't understand. I think they missed their civics class because they really don't know how it works. You know, no, you don't get to plead your case before the cop. You don't get to fight him because you don't feel you're wrong. You accept the arrest and the judge makes a decision. The cops aren't there to make the decision. The judge does. Yeah. You know, and this whole misunderstanding of how law enforcement works and how civics work and how the process works is everything. And then, yes, everything is different from every single agencies. You know, I work for an agency that, yeah, we could do a simple trespassing. We could use our canine to clear the area. And, if, you know, hey, you're in the area. So sorry, so sad. But then you got other agencies that it has to be a violent felony.
Right.
You know, so yes, it does run the gamut. But understanding it, yeah. I mean, in social media, there's so much lack of context with the videos. There's a video floating around right now about a law enforcement officer who sent his dog and he left the dog on the bite. You know, and everybody, I mean, oh my gosh, we're eating our own in law enforcement right now. You get on these websites and they're eating their own. You know, I'm like, guys, you don't understand that the same people you're saying, except, you know, let's wait for a verdict to come out before we start eating our own, are doing it to ourselves.
Sure.
And yeah, understanding context. The video doesn't always show context. What was that guy doing? And everybody's judging. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. And that's not really how it works. It's what would a reasonable officer do in the same situation? That's the way that it works. It's not how would you feel the next morning. It's not how would you feel if you got to watch this video. It's in that moment, a reasonable officer in that opportunity, in that place with that level of training and experience, how would they respond to a situation? And yeah, social media has done so much to destroy that level of trust because people don't know the whole story. They haven't seen everything. And you know, what you see from one camera angle could completely change from another camera angle.
True, true. I would agree with all of that. I think that my personal feeling is I really try to not respond to videos. I responded to that one last week with the guy that hung his dog up, and
that one needed responding to.
We may talk about.
I don't even know about that one.
Salisbury PD.
So it's just an hour and a half from here, and I felt like I kind of had a little bit of an insight as to what was going on there, and maybe we can talk about that. But yeah, I think, you know, the experts abound when those videos come out, and you're looking at a very small portion of time, and you don't know what led up to that. You don't know if that individual just nearly ran over half a dozen people. And so you just don't really know what happens prior to that. And it's very dangerous to comment on those kind of things when you really don't have all the details, and you don't know, again, you don't know what the different policies are as it relates to apprehending an individual. There's a difference between the two agencies that I train, or the three agencies that I train. They each have their own individual policies. And, one perception of one may be that one's more lenient, has a more lenient bite policy than the other. But at the end of the day, our bread and butter is tracking and detection. Those are the things that we really have to be proficient at. But anyway, the video last week, that was a cluster. I think, it's funny, my inside to that is that, and I won't name any names, but North Carolina and this community as a whole is relatively small. I mean, I've never met Rob before, but now I have, and I know people that Rob knows, and Rob knows people that I know, and Mike knows people that all of us know. So it really becomes a much smaller community than most people think. When I saw that video, I realized I had seen that exact same thing before. Years ago, I had visited another agency when I was just getting started. And it was funny because I was watching this guy do obedience with his dog, and I thought, yeah, this all looks very normal. And the dog was in a down position, and he got up, and the handler walks over, and he picks the dog up and slings him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, stringing him up, and walks him back and puts him on the ground. Well, I looked at the trainer like, aren't you going to stop this? And then it occurred to me that he taught him this.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Well, we had the same scenario. I mean, you guys all seen the Vacaville PD one. Vacaville's about 30 minutes from me, and seeing a guy punch his dog.
Yeah.
Put him on his back, punch him, and I got so many phone calls because it's so local to me. And I'm like, well, that's knowing the training group, knowing the trainer, this old salty guy, that's old school.
Sure it is.
I mean,
that's how it was done 30, 40 years ago, but some people haven't upgraded their skills.
Right.
There's a Learberg video of the alpha roll.
Right.
Oh yeah.
No longer available. And the one where the dude, like, he had the Belgian muzzle on, he puts him down, alpha rolls, and puts his finger in, back part of his finger, he's punching and that was for sale.
Yeah.
I
own it.
How many years ago was that? Like 10, 15 years ago? 16?
Oh, no. Way more than that. No, that's probably 20-something years ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
I remember when I had that video, because I was in rescue or like in shelter work, and like obviously that's all positive reinforcement, yes, and like a bunch of stuff like that. Yeah. And then I go into like Schutz and I see that, but I remember watching that video. I'm like, the third dimension has been unlocked. I don't know what's going on anymore. Like this.
Well, all you got to do is look at the videos of the dominant dog collar.
Oh yeah, the original ones.
Yeah, the little slip lead that was custom fit to your dog that you can choke him in half a second.
Yep.
A lot of that stuff that was being out there, but that's what we were all doing. And it's funny is I had a client come in recently and they had a star mark collar. For those who don't know what a star mark collar is, it's like a Lego prong collar.
Yeah.
So
PC friendly.
Yeah. So, and they got this video that came with it. And, so I'm looking at it, I go, can I have the video? Because I just want to watch it for informational purposes. So I go, yeah, we haven't watched it, but you can have it. Okay. I take it home and I put it in, and I'm watching this guy, and it's all dominance theory. And it's all, you don't give the dog treats because that makes you a beta. You don't give the dog food because, the beta gives the alpha food. And all these things. And I'm looking at it and going, what's wrong with this dude in this day and age? Why on earth are you talking about this day? And I didn't even realize it because it didn't hit me, because I'm a product of the 80s and 90s. I look at this fashion, I look at his hair, I look at his clothes, I'm like, holy shit, this video is 30 years old.
Yeah.
And I talked just like that 30 years ago.
Right.
The dominance theory. And if you look up the guy who actually popularized the dominance theory, I just forgot his name, but I'll think in a minute. But he released his book. The research was done in '68. The book was released in '70. It was our holy grail of studying wolves in captivity, where we got all this dominance theory from. The same guy who wrote that book has since done studies on wolves in their natural habitat and said, I wish I'd never wrote that book. He says, I wish they stopped. I guess he signed away his publishing rights, but the publisher is still printing that book and making new releases all the time. I wish they'd quit, because he's completely debunked his own study. Right. All the dominance theory has been washed out the window.
So this is actually a cool topic, and I've been lucky enough to been around wild wolves, like Aaron's brought me out in Minnesota to some sanctuaries where they're out, like we're hanging out, and like I can actually say it's like I was out there drinking beer with wolves, like I was like just doing stuff like that, like it was cool. I mean, mosquitoes ate the shit out of me, but it helped me dive into when I did that years ago, helped me dive into like the actual psychology of like how different. I mean, because everyone was like, oh, it's wolf pack mentality, blah, 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 with dogs. And it's not even remotely close. I mean, this is something I always preach, is that, dogs aren't wolves. Right. Do they have some genetic trait or, genetic traits? Yeah, there's something there. But what we did as people is that we divided ourselves so far, because we created them to be biddable, which is being, wanting to work for us. We created them to be dependent. We did all these other things. We wanted him to want to work for us. We wanted to do all this other stuff. We created these breeds. And then somewhere in the last 10 years, we're like, free for all.
Oh, don't get me started on that. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to note that, yes, dogs are not wolves, but wolves are a breed of dogs. And just like we have genetic traits that we breed dogs to, the same with a wolf. You can count on a wolf being fearful and shy of man because it's a defense mechanism. It's a survival thing. So yes, we have a different dog. So no, you can't compare the two. That's like comparing a German Shepherd to a Labrador and expecting there to be some kind of correlation. There's not. Learning theory stays the same, but temperament is different.
Right. And then even talking about learning theory, what most people think about learning theory, when you look at it, if you pack structuralize it, like for me, like I run a house where my dogs aren't allowed to correct each other. Like this just we all work together. They listen to me. I'm the only one that gets to correct them, or Aaron. Like that's pretty much it. That's how I run my pack. Like that's how I can send my whole squad up the hill to go and find the bad guy. Like, because they understand they can't do those things. So I think like it's individually different per the dog that's in front of you, and also independent on what you're trying to do, and then not utilizing, like, this is the issue I've always had with like the Cesar Millan aspect, was that it's always like it's pack mentality, blah, blah. It's like, well, I mean, if you talk about pack mentality, like an actual like wolf pack, like they'll kill that guy. Like
they will call themselves out. They will call it out.
They call their own litters. Like they let's I mean, if we want to get into like actual like realistic like wolf pack mentality, they eat babies. Like that's what.
Well, and that's what the guy who's the original author of all the dominance theory, what he learned was studying the wolves in Yellowstone, is they're actually not different dogs living amongst each other. The alpha male and female are actually mom and dad to all the wolves that are around them. Until those wolves break off and start their own little packs, being the mommy and daddies, that pack is not strange wolves coming together and working.
It's built within. It's like lions.
It's a family. So the alpha male and female were the breeders because they're mama and daddy. It's not putting these together, and that's where people are getting us even screwed up today with having dogs who are over socialized, putting dogs in dog parks, putting dogs in play groups, all these things that are totally unnatural for a canine to be in. They're not.
So let's reinstate that. Let's rephrase that whole. Let's reinstate that whole entire thing you just said, Rob. It's unnatural.
Yes.
Dog parks are unnatural.
Yes. Totally unnatural.
They're for people.
They're for people. Man, you just go down and watch, and they're all talking to each other. They're all having a good time with each other while they're dogs. And you know, the best analogies I use, even with my own clients who think that because they've heard on the internet, and we're going to be talking about more about social media here, but they've heard on the internet that that's how you socialize your dog, is take them to a dog park and let them play with other dogs. And, you know, I'm like, well, even walking down the street, you know, somebody comes up, can my dog say hi to your dog? No. Can I say hi to your dog? No. And people aren't asking for permission. They're couching their intentions in the form of a question.
They're like, can I say hi to your dog?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the best thing to do, especially when I have clients who are parents, I go, did you let people walk up and touch your kid? I'm like, no. Did you let your kid play with kids that you didn't know? No. Did you let your kid get bullied on the playground by other kids? No. Did you let your kid bully other kids? No. But why are you allowing all that with your dog?
Yeah.
Boom.
It's funny. There's been a group of folks that are trying to put one in our little community. And I am waiting for the day that I actually get asked about my opinion on this. And I am going to be the worst person in the whole entire town, because the beauty of that thinks it's a bad idea.
Yeah, the beauty of it, Howard, is when you decide that you want to get into the pet business, it'll be the best thing that ever happened to you.
It's just going to be making it rain.
Exactly, because every one of those dogs is going to come in for training for leash reactivity, for dog aggression, everything else. All those dogs in the dog parks are going to be calling you, I got to fix my dog. You know, if I actually knew how to do a spreadsheet, and I could make an Excel spreadsheet that was the advent of dog parks and the advent of my dog training business, my pet training business, that arc went right up together. And so, yeah, it's amazing for business. It sucks because I love dogs, but I wish they didn't exist. And I wish I didn't have a successful dog training business based upon the fact that people are being stupid with their dogs. But you're going to see a huge increase in business if you get a dog park.
So, Howard, that being said, so you think about, you know, obviously, you know, you deal with like human, you know, mental psychology, the way that they think. You deal with dogs, the mental psychology and how they think, and like things that they do. And like, we're on completely different coasts, even like between you, me, and Rob, like we're very much further from each other. When you are working with your dogs and things that you're working with, like when you look at the mental psychology from a dog, and especially when you're talking about like the stuff that we're talking about, social neutrality, you know, when you're coming in with a team, the dog's going through there, how much social neutrality do you guys work with, and how important is it, do you see it, especially with what we talked about, the new influx of what people think is socialization with dog parks and, you know, puppy play dates and everything like that. So if you can sum that up for me.
I mean, in terms of the dog being social with other officers, or
the correlation of social with other officers versus what people think socialization actually is.
Oh goodness. Well, you know, I'm kind of a little bit of a crossroads, not really a crossroads, but I'm having a different line of thinking as it relates to, I think there have been handlers in the past, and I'm thinking one in particular that felt like he needed to have a dog that only he could manage. And I think that a lot of that was really a pride issue. And it's a really unfortunate story, because the dog was phenomenal, but he became that. He became that dog that only he could manage. Now, he could work in any situation, whether he was doing detection, doing bite work. He's not going to bite everybody. And if he's focused on his task, he's not dangerous at all. In fact, he was very well controlled, but he was well controlled with that particular handler. Here's the unfortunate story part. He was shot and killed 4 years ago, serving a warrant. We got a phone call 12:30 at night to come secure the dog so I envisioned, one, of course, I was concerned about his safety. Two, I was very concerned that the dog was out there, and he wasn't. But the reality is that that dog had no relationship with anybody. So kind of where I am now, and I was left to deal with that. And inevitably, we ended up taking that dog in his retirement. He was 9 years old when this occurred. He was real close to retirement, but it was quite a chore to get him socialized to our family. So it took me, I took my time with my wife. It took about 2 months to where I felt like he was completely comfortable with her and she could manage him. For me, it was really quick, but you know, when you decoy for a dog for so long and you get this in your head, it's kind of hard to kind of switch gears. That the reality is that dog really liked me because he enjoyed the work that we did together. So it really wasn't, the hang up was mine. The dog was good from the get-go, honestly. He was a little pushy, but he never attacked me. But, you know, in terms of the work that I think as we go forward, I really like the aspect of a dog being able to be managed by other handlers as well. It doesn't make him any less effective. He can still be just as effective. I think that is a very old school mentality too. I don't want anybody messing with my dog. Well, the reality is that there are plenty of team dogs out there that work with lots of different people. Yeah. And I think that's just a more healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
But in terms of our dogs being social, they're not social from the aspect that obviously we kind of have a policy. We don't let anybody pet them. I mean, obviously there are people that ask. So that's a no-go. People ask to pet the patrol dog. No, that's not an option. And some folks do, and that's fine. We just have chosen not to take that liability because, you know, dogs are dogs, and somebody might turn away and miss a cue, and boom, then we've got an accident and we've got a situation. So with the dogs, obviously, they're you know, we do building searches all the time where there's other officers, other people in the building at the same time. And generally, when you're sending your dogs to search a building, they're looking for things behind doors. Somebody standing in an open room, yeah, they're going to tag them. But generally speaking, they're trying to detect. They're doing detection when they're doing building searches. So as a backup officer, you're perfectly fine behind them. Generally, you can walk with them if you need to. So they're social in that aspect. They're controlled. That's maybe a better word than social, because they're really they're not particularly social. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Well, I'll tap into that too. And I like your term social neutrality, which is what I strive for and what I give every dog. You know, I coined a phrase years ago when they asked me to go do a talk at Google. And it just came into my head that day when I was doing the presentation on training philosophies and psychologies. And I said, Disneyland is next to me. The greatest place on earth is right next to me. That's where his tug happens. That's where rewards happen. That's where he gets sent from. Everything on earth is the greatest place ever. He was never allowed to go out and just be nilly-willy with other dogs or other people. He didn't get, so no, you're not excited by other stimulus like dogs or people, but you're not afraid of them either. You're just neutral. They look out and go, yes, that's a person, that's a dog, but my human, what do you have for me? And I think that's what we're talking about with you know, that social neutrality.
100%.
So when I go into a situation, I got to send my dog into a backyard. I got to send my dog into a house and there's another animal there. My dog is not interested in that. That's not what they're out there for. There's, you know, guys who are around me. They're neither a threat nor their friend. Right. They're just guys around me.
Sure.
Because all the greatest things happen right here. And he just goes, all I care about is you at this moment. Mm-hmm. And I know we talk a lot about dogs being selfish and everything else, but yes, through the conditioning process, all I care about is what's coming from your hand and from your mouth. And I'm not worried about anything else around me. And I try to do that with every dog I raise, whether it's a client civilian dog, where we don't have the dog get excited, especially like in a multi-dog household, when I tell people, hey, if you're going to have a second and third dog, you need to raise them like they're the only dog. You know, for their first year of their life, everything still is all about you, not about playing with the other dog, not getting trained by the other dog. You know, it's all about you. You got to train them like you did the first dog. Otherwise, you basically got your pet a pet.
Right.
Yeah. So I want it to be the all glowing, all happy, all Disneyland thing in their life, and everything else is just stuff.
Yep. 100%. I just say everyone else is furniture. Only thing that matters is me and my daughter, my wife here. So before we end this this amazing Drinks and Dogs, obviously, like, this is the conversation I wanted to have with you guys. You guys have been in the industry for a very long time. I mean, shit, Rob, I think you've been in the industry longer than I've been alive. Howard, about 5 years short of that. Working heavily within, like, and not even just in the industry as training dogs, but actually like working dogs throughout the years. And this is something that's always been extremely, like, for me, like, I like to watch like behavior. I like to watch like things move. I like to see how people react to certain things. I like, that's something that's been extremely interesting to me, you know, given my past and everything that's and just even my fighting background. I've been a counterpuncher my whole life without knowing it. I like to watch these things, and I've noticed, and especially during COVID, a change in the way that social media works. And you guys have been doing this before even social media existed, like anything, like nothing. What have you guys noticed? And I'll let you guys pick and choose who you guys want to go forth with. How much has social media affected business or just the dog training industry, or any comments you may have with that? You know, go ahead and have at it whenever you guys want, you know, when you guys want to go.
Well, you want to go first, Howard?
Go ahead. It doesn't matter.
All right. Well, social media for me, you know, and seeing in the dog training world, again, it goes back to just the last topic we were talking about. It's just the inundation of incorrect information. The well-meaning people who really know nothing about learning theory, who really know nothing about animal psychology, who never really studied, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what I tell people all the time. When we're doing dog training, we're doing CBT. We're not doing Freudian stuff where we care about what happened in their past. This is the behavior we have. This is what we're addressing at this time. Yeah, but this idea that every rescue dog must have been abused. Every dog needs to say hi to every dog, and this fur baby syndrome that's going on in the pet community, which is destroying dogs. You know, it's increased that. It's increased it tenfold. It didn't exist. I mean, when I was a kid, the dogs lived outside. That's what they did. It was my English Bulldog was the first dog that was allowed to sleep in the house with me. Every other dog is outside. Yeah. And the creeping in of the 1970s pop psychology of child training has creeped into the dog training community. Don't tell your dog no, because it will affect their self-esteem. You know, you just want to throat punch somebody. Are you kidding me? The dog doesn't know what no means. If I say no and give my dog a treat, let's charge the marker. No treat, no treat, no treat. No means something good. And if I say good dog and smack it in the face every time, good dog is going to have a different meaning. So it's a lack of just basic understanding of classical conditioning, operant conditioning, the lack of learning theory that's being perpetuated in these circles based upon human emotions and not true science. It's like the purely positive folks saying it's based on science. Well, no, B.F. Skinner taught us a lot about behavioral things, and it was science. And nobody has ever shown a study that says purely positive, never actually correcting a dog, is scientific to show the dog how they work. I've worked with animal trainers we're fortunate enough to be here in Vallejo where we have Six Flags, where we have dolphins and all that. I've gotten to go out and hang out with those trainers and learn their theories. And actually some of those trainers actually bring me their dogs to train because it's a little bit different than training a marine mammal. You know, and I asked him, I go, you know, all this nonsense about, well, they never have to use a positive punisher on a marine mammal. Yeah, but a marine mammal's stuck in a small tank. All their food comes from the human. And even then, if you know the lions and the tigers that are in training, none of those lions and tigers are about 3 or 4 years old that they're working with in their show. Because once a lion or a tiger hits sexual maturity, they don't work them anymore. Mm-hmm. They just can't. Mm-hmm. They're no longer going to work. You know, so
all rank drive.
Yeah. Once, you know, so people who don't understand these things and are trying to use these examples and trying to go to, so, you know, and just being able to perpetuate it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Social media has definitely done a lot of damage to the basic understanding of, you know, where the old days, yeah, we didn't know as much as we do now, and there wasn't as much information, but when the trainer talked, people listened.
Right.
Now they're going, well, let me go look on the internet and see what the internet says.
See what the internet experts have to say.
The Google machine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you know, I think it's open to, you're right. I think the hard part is for people to try to decipher what's the good stuff from the bad stuff. And, you know, anthropomorphism kind of winds its way back in. People's emotions, they start attaching to dogs, and it gets very convoluted. And you can even hear somebody say, even hear a trainer say, well, this dog likes to please. Really? Does he really? He's particularly adept at getting his needs met through you. I don't think he's trying to please you at all. He happens to do something that you like. That looks like he's trying to please you. But again, I think there's good and bad. I think for a lot of folks, though, the fact that you have immediate access to information, whether it's good or bad, I mean, that's the difficult part. But the fact that you have such quick information, where we never had that. We referred to the Learberg videos. That was a lifeline for a lot of us, because the only time that we got any feedback is when we went to a seminar and you got to see what your other folks in your state or in your region were doing. And I always found that I could validate something that I'd come up with, because you could see somebody else doing it. And I always liked my guys going to seminars, because they kind of look around and go, hey, we're pretty good, you know, and then they would come home and it was kind of a shot in the arm, because they had access to, I thought, pretty good training. So there's good and bad stuff. I'd say for me, it opened, when I started this Whitebeard thing, that was really because of taxes, honestly. But what it did, though, is it did open that year, for whatever reason. I've been doing this all these years, and I went to very few seminars. About 3 or 4 years ago, when we started this business, I started looking at, hey, there's a workshop nearby. There's another workshop nearby. I'm going to start going to these workshops, and I can write them off on my taxes. Duh. I mean, in the past, the police department paid for it, but now I was paying for it myself, and I actually started going. I went to see Mike Suttle, Pat Nolan, Hans Verbruggen, all in 1 year, and it was like, holy cow, I've been missing out. And it really opened my eyes to a whole different way of training. And honestly, before then, I was probably considered pretty old school. I mean, if you'd asked me 4 or 5 years ago about a clicker, I wouldn't have laughed, but I wouldn't have gone, yeah, I know exactly where I would use that, or I know how I would use that. It would be definitely more compulsion, but not heavy-handed compulsion.
Yeah.
I really have implemented more things as a result of, and indirectly maybe, social media, because I wouldn't have known about those people probably had I not read about them or seen videos. So there's maybe the positive side of that. If you connect yourself to the right people, then yeah. But man, there is a ton of misinformation out there for sure.
Yeah, I guess that's probably something we should all think about too. Yeah, I didn't even go to the positive aspects of it. I mean, Ivan Balabanov and guys like that, and learning conflict-free training. I mean, that's been my core for years now. You know, and I didn't need him to teach it to me. It became, you know, but he validated it for me. And 90% of the dogs now that go through handlers courses with me never even see a pinch collar. Yeah.
It was funny. The world did become much smaller too as a result of social media. in terms of, you know, I've kind of
it crunched things down.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just this connection alone. I mean, when would we have crossed paths?
Right.
Right. That's like so in 2020 and 2021, for me at least, it became like one of these like actually it started with Rob's like hot wings challenge. So it like for me, like I am what you see. Like this is pretty much exactly who the person I am that you're gonna meet. Like, you know what, I might curse a little more in person. But it was really crazy to me that how social media had brought so many people together, but divided a lot at the same time. And then when COVID hit, you know, we started this Drinks and Dogs, we started PCU Online, we started the War Room, we started K9 Street League with Oscar. We did a bunch of different things to kind of help unify specific elements of dog training, and kind of show that dog training isn't dog training. Dog training is a broad spectrum, like let's say, you know, Howard, you know, mental health. You know, there's a lot of different mental illnesses out there in the world, like, and there's a lot of different issues when it comes to, you know, dogs, and, you know, different specializations, and, you know, it is a specialty thing. It's just like, if you're a doctor, what are you a doctor of? Are you a doctor of brain surgery, stomach, you know, like it just, there's the variety of it. Same thing as a dog trainer. So a dog trainer is not always necessarily a dog trainer. But I felt like that was a good part for me to, in this, especially in 2020, to go ahead and be like, look at, dog training is not dog training. This is all the dog training. Like these are all the different guys in dog training, like that specialize in different things. What may be my weakness, maybe this person's strong point, and this is where we need to go to for this thing, or like, you know, vice versa. So I've utilized social media in a sense of, and like for me, this isn't like like there's no real competition for me, like in the sense of that, because I feel like there's just like, we can all share this together. I mean, there's dogs everywhere. Like there's no way. Like,
this business is not slowing down. This
I mean, like,
industry is not getting smaller.
And I think
you talk about the specializing part of it, and that's the thing. You guys have a specialty in pets, and that's something that you developed, and I don't feel like that's definitely not my specialty, because that's not where I've invested my time. I think I understand some of the dynamics, but if I had a nickel for the number of times that people ask me questions about their pets on a weekly basis, I'd be very, very wealthy, and I would have retired long ago. But, you know, the bottom line is I'm pretty good at teaching dogs to find things and bite people. I mean, that's really my specialty. I feel like if I'm going to venture into that business, and I probably will at some point, I got a lot to learn, and I'm glad I have resources.
Yeah. I think I look at it this way, Rob, and you'll probably co-sign on with me on this, like especially what you're talking about right now, Howard, is that if you look at combat sports, you know, there's a magnitude, multitude, what frame you want to put it in, of different variations of it. Just on, let's say, stand up, there's kickboxing, you know, there's taekwondo, there's karate, there's, you know, boxing, there's a bunch of different stand-up arts, you know. And when it comes to ground games, jiu-jitsu, you know, freaking judo, there's so many different variations of combat sports, right? So there's different arts that people specialize in. And I feel like some people specialize in a lot of them, and some people round about them. And I feel like people who are specialists in those things, and like that's where you look at combat sports, I look at the same way as dog training. This person's great at like what you're great at, Howard, like the things that you do. This person's good at what you do, Rob. Like this is the things that you do. This, like, these people want this. Like this is where, you know, you go to Primal Canine or whatever it may be.
Right.
But it's all based on, and this is like the point of Drinks and Dogs, is to show, you know, dog training is not dog training. You know, right. You guys have spent decades proficiently being perfect at your craft, or progressing your craft and doing everything that you guys have done. And whether you guys are dog trainers, but you guys are individually different. Mm-hmm. And what you guys are proficient at are individually different, and different styles, whether it may be the same topic, but you guys are good at it and doing the style that you guys have. It's still proficient in what you guys are doing. And it's the same thing. Like I envision when it comes to the stuff within Primal Canine and things that we do here. And that's why we have PCU online, is because I want to be able to provide great information and different perspectives, because it works for you and it works for what you guys are doing. And I think that's where social media comes into play when it comes to being a good thing. But I also view it as one of those things that can be a bad thing really quickly, especially when it comes to the masses, because you can fall down that Google machine rabbit hole and the YouTube monster and go go down there.
Well, like you said, it's a double-edged sword, and you get people out there who have a lot of followers who probably shouldn't be training dogs at all. You get people with bonkers, and you get people doing this and that, and all the nonsense out there, dog training. Again, with a lack of understanding of proper learning theory, and also understanding that, my methods work, but my methods aren't the only methods.
Right.
And every dog training question, I tell people all the time, every dog training question should be answered with, it depends. And I think the more of us that are out there to get more of those, well, it depends on what. Well, what did that guy do to help us out? Being able to reach across these kind of, social media platforms and going, hey, you're effective. What did you do different? What happened in this scenario? Because, I tell people a lot. I'm not the dog trainer I was 5 years ago. And I hope I'm not the dog trainer in 5 years that I am now.
Yeah.
I hope I've continued to progress, and the overwhelming amount of information, if disseminated properly on the internet, is absolutely helpful to us. So in that regard, it's definitely a positive, but the dissemination is the problem, and the lack of ability to disseminate.
This is a good thing that you brought up to Rob, and then Howard, because you are in the mental health industry. Defining a cookie cutter method in dog training and utilizing human failed psychology and forcing that on every single dog. As a mental health professional, how do you feel about that?
Well, that's lunacy. How's that?
Yeah, I figured you were going to say the same.
So what you're saying is that there are a significant number of folks out there that do that.
Yeah.
That have a very prescribed, these are the timelines that this needs to take place in, and that's how they make their money.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard much.
Yeah, well, that goes to the phrase we always use with my company: train the dog in front of you. There is no one approach. Yeah. I had a dog today. I was working with a behavior modification case. It was an American Bully XL, big-headed, beautiful boy, but wants to kill every car that comes near him. If a car is coming down the street, he's going to kill that car. That's what he wanted to do. And you couldn't.
Busy as hell.
Oh yeah, and they live on one of the busiest streets in our town. Like, oh man, what a combination. Now, typically, when I teach a dog to walk with this person, it's engaged with this person, not in the environment. We're not sniffing. We're not, marking every little thing. But this dog also has a very strong drive to sniff and to mark. You can just see it. You can almost feel the oxytocin being released into his brain, when he does this. So I took this dog out today on that busiest street, and I go, every time a car comes at us, tell him to take a break. And that dog would go immediately. I go, find a post, find a hydrant, find a tree, something that's really highly scented. Mm-hmm. Let the dog go out, take a break. And the dog go, boom. As soon as the car started coming, he would start now looking at the car, but go, I'd like to go back to this. I wouldn't do that in any other situation. But that needed to be done for that dog. And the therapy will hopefully be that oxytocin keeps getting released into that dog's brain whenever that car's coming at him. Instead of it being a negative thing where cortisol is being dumped, now oxytocin will take its place. And within an hour, we saw a complete change within that dog by just going outside of my normal thinking
Mm-hmm.
and finding what works for that dog.
So there really is no box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always open. That's how I feel about any form of thought process or psychology and things in general. It's, you know, you got to adapt to what's in front of you and work with that. You work with what you have.
Yeah. So one of the work phrases is all you got to do is.
Well, and the thing is too is
all you got to do is listen and watch.
Well, understanding that, you know, dealing with a dog is like dealing with a nonverbal autistic human.
The term I use
there's
is
analogy right there.
Yeah.
One of the terms I use for my clients when they come in, I'm basically, you know, how do you think your dog feels? You just dumped them in a third world country. No, they don't understand the language. They can't, their mouths shut. They can't say anything. How do you think they feel? Like, how do you think they understand? And you're just sitting here being like, oh,
yeah,
all this stuff's going on. Like, I was like, every verbal communication, every form of physical contact has some form of meaning or learning to that dog. And I simplify the shit out of it because I'm a simple person. So, you know, the same thing, like I tell people, like, everything that you do with your dog, and dogs are associated based learners, they learn from it.
Yeah. Well, you're either training by omission or by commission. It's what you lack to do or what you're trying to do. But either way, the dog's still learning. The dog's always training. The dog's always modifying its own behaviors because either A, we omit to train, or B, we commit to train.
So for those who don't understand the big words that Rob is using, it's associative based learning. This gets you this gets you that. You don't have to Google all the Google machine.
And they're learning all the time.
Always.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too. Like, I'm sure, like, you know, dealing with mental health, like teaching Howard, like, I'm sure, like, this is all things that kind of play with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, consistently.
And also understanding we have 4 lobes through the human brain. Dogs have 2. They don't have the frontal cortex or the temporal lobe to do all of their compassions and empathies and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to come down to their learning levels. They can't come up to ours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're not your babies.
They are not your fur babies.
Well, I'm gonna Howard, I know it's getting late for you over there, so I'm gonna let you guys get off here. But before I wrap this up, first of all, before we start plugging your guys' everything you guys are going, I want to say thank you. You know, I've actually been working on getting this podcast or this episode up for the past 4 weeks, 3 months, like,
well, like 8 months for me.
It's been a long time. I've been working on this, and I appreciate your patience. I mean, I've been working on a lot of different projects, but, you know, this is one I really wanted to put out there. I really wanted to work with you guys on because it is, you know, different coast, different ideals, but all ends up being the same. And, you know, I just appreciate your guys' time. So, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being on. Thank you for being Drinks and Dogs. So I'm gonna cheers you guys real quick. Cheers. Howard's like, this is like my 3rd glass of whiskey. Rob's like, I'm pretty much done with the bottle. But so let's go ahead and get down the line here. Howard, how can anyone get a hold of you if they need some training or anything?
I'm open for seminars. In fact, I'm doing one in Georgia the week after next. Do it with the Georgia Police K9 Foundation. I'm coming back there. I'm fortunate they keep inviting me back. I've got a good buddy of mine, Rich Harden, who has an incredible resume, but he's got a business in Louisville, Kentucky, Double H K9. And Mike Santana is a handler trainer down there in Georgia who's going to be helping as well. And then Michael Nesbitt and Carlos Ramirez will be there as well. So some heavy hitters, some really great young talent. I like doing seminars, and that would be, the more of those, the better. I'm on Instagram. I'm K9TRNR. Facebook, I'm Howard Young. I also have a Whitebeard K9 Facebook page, but I don't do a whole lot on that. I stay pretty active on social media, though.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
You did good. You did good.
Yeah, more than me, I think.
Yeah.
Big Rob, go ahead. What's yours?
So nexgenk9.com is a website. No T.
NEX.
TN K9. No T. Yeah. And on Facebook, same thing. And also I run that rescue, 11th Hour Canine Rescue, which is what the whole fundraiser was for the Hot Wings Challenge that we did. I go into shelters when the shelter calls me and go, we're going to put this dog down because nobody can handle it. It's a behavioral case. You know, can you come see it? Now I go in and most of the time take that dog out, rehabilitate it, and get it to the proper home. So that's really popular. 11th Hour. So it's 11THHOUR K9rescue.com. You can look there. And also, again, they're on Facebook and Instagram. I know a lot of people who are listening tonight have added me as friends on Instagram. The One K9 page is my personal page, so you won't see too much of our business going on there. But if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're also at Nexgen K9 and also 11th Hour K9 Rescue. So you can find us there.
Awesome. Well, again, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy weeks. I know you guys are grinding out there. So thank you so much. Thanks for everyone that's.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. You know, I told the guys, I was like, we got to bring the OGs in here now. So we got to bring the OGs in this thing. So you know, I appreciate you guys for being on. Howard, I'll be out there here pretty soon, the end of this year, be working some dogs. Rob, we're next door to each other, so I got some stuff I got to do here pretty soon, especially with Street League. The only announcement that the tech team has made me to say right now is if you guys are watching at 9 o'clock, and this is the stuff that I hate to do because I'm not a person that likes to be on Instagram or any social media. I don't just do this because I'm forced to do it. But at 9 o'clock tonight, Pacific Standard Time, the K9, a Road to K9 Street League second episode comes out. So that is roughly 29 minutes from this point right now. Episode 2 of Road to Street League is coming up. So thanks again, guys, for being on this. I appreciate you guys so much. Yeah, guys. Rob, I'm going to send you some Cerberus whiskey.
All right, I'm waiting for it.
I can't wait to work some dogs with you here soon. And then also, guys, the PCU team, thanks for putting this on. So everyone, thanks for watching.
Yep.
Sign up. Check these dudes out. We'll be talking soon.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
How do we do that?